Please join with me in our gospel acclamation. Please stand.
The Lord be with you. And with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Glory to you, Lord. Jesus said to his disciples, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He takes away every branch in me that does not bear fruit. And every one that does, he prunes so that it bears more fruit. You are already pruned because of the word that I spoke to you. Remain in me, as I remain in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit on its own, unless it remains on the vine, so neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in me, and I in him, will bear much fruit. Because without me, you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me will be thrown out like a branch and wither. People will gather them and throw them into a fire, and they will be burned. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask for whatever you want, and it will be done for you. By this is my Father's glorified, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Bishop Hubbard, we'd like to welcome you to Rensselaer County, in particular to the Taconic Vicariate. On behalf of Father Richard Donovan of St. Anthony's in Troy, Father Thomas Holmes of St. Henry's Church in Averill Park, Father James Sidoti, who is with us this evening, on his behalf, from St. Joseph's here in Troy, on behalf of myself, Father Anthony Legato, the pastor of St. Michael the Archangel, we would like to present now our candidates to you for confirmation. Candidates, please stand.
My brother priests, deacons, dear religious, parents, sponsors, family members, and friends of those who are to be confirmed, my dear men and women of the confirmation class. It is certainly a great joy and privilege for me to be with you this evening to share with the candidates from this parish of St. Michael's, as well as the candidates from St. Henry's in Averill Park, St. Joseph's in Troy, and St. Anthony's in Troy, this gift of God's Holy Spirit, which is given to you in the sacrament of confirmation. I'm very grateful to your pastors, the newly assigned pastor here at St. Michael's, Father Legato, Father Sidoti, Father Holmes, and Father Donovan. And I certainly want to mention the role that Sister Kate Arsenault played during her many years as the parish life director here in the community. I'm also grateful to Deacon Bob Sweeney for his liturgical service this evening and for the pastoral care that he renders the elderly and the seniors in our parish community here at St. Michael the Archangel. Of course, in a very special way today, we congratulate, thank, and salute the parents and family members, because without your support, love, prayers, cooperation, and sacrifices, this celebration would not be possible. We are grateful to our coordinators of faith formation, to Barbara Berger, to Patty Schwartz, and to Sarah Tripp, and to all the catechists who have been involved with these candidates in their preparation for the celebration of the sacrament. We are grateful to those of you who have accepted the responsibility of being sponsors. We thank our Masters of Ceremonies, Deacon Chuck Booten and David Amico. We are very grateful to our organist, David Rossi, to our cantor, Brother Ron Davis, and to all the members of the music ministry for making this such a joyous and meaningful celebration. In just a moment, each of you candidates will come forward to be anointed on the forehead with the oil of sacred chrism. And at that time, you will receive the gift of the Holy Spirit, which was first conferred upon you in abundance in the sacrament of baptism, and now is given to you in its fullness, in order that you might live in the future as practicing adult members of our Catholic Christian community. And as you seek to live as disciples of Jesus in the days ahead, I would suggest there are 5 very important qualities that you seek to integrate into your lives and into your careers. First, it is extremely important that you have a deep and abiding trust in God's providence. This first part of the 21st century has been one filled with many difficulties and challenges. On 9/11/2001, we had the first terrorist attack to ever hit the United States. At the World Trade Center in New York City, in the fields of Pennsylvania, and at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. In 2002, we had the bombshell revelation of the Boston Globe about the scandal of clergy sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. In 2002, we had the invasion of Afghanistan, which continues today after 17 years of conflict. In 2003, the invasion of Iraq. In 2007 and 2008, we had the Great Recession that affected so many in the areas of employment and housing. We've also experienced the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as the movement of Me Too, and we've had the terrorist attacks globally and domestically in Paris, London, Brussels, and Barcelona, as well as on the bike path in New York City, a small Baptist church in Texas, the attack of the nightclub in Orlando, and most recently, the terrible shooting that took place in Parkland, Florida. We can, I think, be very edified by the response of the students there and throughout the country who have stood up and who have demanded that there be changes in gun control legislation so that these attacks do not continue in the future. But in the face of these tragedies that I have cited, as well as those that have taken place in your own personal lives, with death in family or illness or addiction, it can well arise that you could become very discouraged and disillusioned, to lose sight of the fact that the renewal of our church, that the renewal of our world and society is not a romp or a few years of intensive work, but a long, hard, arduous process that undoubtedly will extend beyond the lifetime of any one of us here present. And that is why it is so important that you candidates have patient endurance that enables you to cope and endure the challenges of life, that you have a vision of life that is rooted in trust in God's providence and an cleansing discipline of historical perspective, that you realize that we are living in a world and society where few areas are all black or all white, but where various shades of gray predominate. And in the midst of such a world and society, you must be willing to accept the confusion, the agitation, and the turmoil that abound therein, and to tolerate imperfection while seeking to change it. And this is not to lose one's values, nor to compromise one's ideals, but rather to live like a human being in a world where the full force of Christ's resurrection and the work of the Holy Spirit is not been felt. Yes, we constantly live in that balance between the cross and the resurrection. On the one hand, weeping over the plight of Jerusalem, and on the other, joyful because of an Easter victory which this Paschal candle symbolizes, and longing for a future that shapes this our present moment in human history. Secondly, it is important that you candidates be willing to adopt a lifestyle that enables you to live with what is sufficient. In 1980, our Holy Father, Pope St. John Paul II, issued a pastoral letter entitled Centesimus Annus, the 100th year, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the first papal social encyclical given by Leo XIII, entitled Rerum Novarum. And in his encyclical, Pope John Paul II lamented that consumerism that he described as exhausting. He pointed out that we in the West in particular are molded and shaped and influenced by consumerism. We are bombarded incessantly by high-powered advertising techniques which seek to define and create more and greater needs. The superfluous becomes the convenient becomes the necessary, and the necessary becomes the indispensable. Furthermore, these high-powered advertising techniques not only seek to define and create more and greater needs, but they seek to shape the attitude and the personality of the consumer as well. The self becomes the center of the universe. Other people, things to serve one's needs. The moral norm, efficiency, the means, whatever works, let the chips fall where they may. Be these the chips of abortion, adultery, unethical business practice, or whatever else suits one's convenience. And that is why it is so important that as disciples of Jesus, we listen to what gospel values have to say. Gospel values that tell us how blessed are the poor in spirit. Gospel values that point out it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. Gospel values that point out that we should be content to be fed and be clothed. And while all would readily admit that these are gospel values, there are far too few people today who are willing to take the steps necessary or to make the sacrifices required to translate these gospel values into lived realities. For example, the poor person says, let the rich begin. I've had enough frugality already. And the rich person says, why should I give up that which I have already achieved? Besides, if this is going to work, then everyone must be in the same boat. Therefore, let someone else begin, and then we'll see. With the net result that no one does anything. And here, I believe, is where you candidates for confirmation this evening can be an effective antidote to this consumerism of our day by adopting a lifestyle that enables you to live with what is sufficient. A lifestyle that is less dependent upon money, power, prestige, affluence, and influence, and that is more open and available in service to others. A lifestyle characterized by simplicity in clothing, diet, transportation, and entertainment, and by prayers for, advocacy on behalf of, and service to the poor. You must recognize that the most pitiful form of human poverty is not the deprivation of material goods and possessions, but rather it is the lack of knowledge of God and the lack of a meaningful relationship with God in one's life. And that is why it is so important that you candidates continue to stir up and communicate to others an awareness of that fundamental human phenomenon as St. Augustine described some 18 centuries ago when he observed, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." Fourth, or third rather, it is important that you be people of joy. On the night of the Last Supper, after washing the feet of his disciples and instituting the sacraments of Holy Orders and the Eucharist, Jesus said to his apostles, "I have loved you, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete." Joy then is a hallmark of the Christian life. Gloomy gusts and sorrowful sighs have no place among the disciples of Jesus Christ. Your words, your deeds, your gestures, your facial expressions should communicate the message, "I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be with you. I'm delighted to be a herald of the good news." And a sense of humor enables us to gain this perspective. Now, sometimes we in the church can look upon humor as frivolous, undignified, or unbecoming the grand scheme of the divine that we are privileged to represent. Or because at times we are troubled or are dealing with people who are troubled, we can tend, by dint of personality, to become overly dour or serious. And that is why it's important that we be able to step back, to gain the balance, the proportion, the sense of perspective needed to cope with the incongruities of life, and to realize that these incongruities need not defeat us. And a sense of humor enables us to gain this perspective. Note well that the humor of which I speak has nothing to do with laughing and telling jokes, because the world is filled with people who laugh and tell jokes, but who have no sense of humor. And neither does the humor of which I speak have anything to do with poking fun at another's foibles or ridiculing another's stupidity. Rather, genuine humor, like a true sense of humility, involves a ruthless honesty concerning oneself without any pretense or show. It deals with those surprises that upset the way we think things ought to be, and it lightens the heaviness associated with hurt. Humor doesn't deny hurt, but it becomes that vehicle through which anger, defiance, and pain can be handled constructively. I hope then that in the days ahead, you candidates will cultivate a sense of humor that enables you to laugh at yourself and with others, so that you can avoid that anxiety or uptightness that can impede your effectiveness as a person and make it more difficult for others to recognize God's presence in your life and in your career. And sometimes you can find humor in events of everyday life. Just this week, for example, I was running late for a confirmation, and as I was cruising along the highway trying to make up some time, all of a sudden, to the rear view mirror, I caught sight of the famous flashing red light. So I pulled off to the side of the road, and out of the state police car got this big, burly Irish trooper. He walked over, bent down, looked in the window, and caught sight of my Roman collar. He said, "I've been waiting for a guy like you all day long." To which I responded, "Well, I got here as fast as I could." And he thought it was such a good response that he gave me a ticket. Fourth, it is important that you have that quality that I would call resilience. About a month ago, Time magazine had an article about a 20-year study on resilience that points out that resilience in one's life is that quality that best enables you to cope with stress and anxiety and challenges. And the article said there are 5 components to this quality of resilience. First, you must adopt a set of beliefs that endure. Second, you must have values that you can apply to given choices that you have to make. Third, you should surround yourself with family members and friends who are supportive. Fourth, you shouldn't be beating yourself up or living in the past. And fifth, you should meditate, or as we would say in the Catholic Christian community, pray. And that brings me to the final quality that I would suggest that you candidates integrate into your life if you are to be faithful disciples of Jesus. And that quality is prayerfulness. Because it is only in prayer that you can touch base with the Lord. It is only in prayer that you can see yourself as you really are and as God sees you. And it is only in prayer that you can overcome the frustrating, unpleasant, and at times totally incomprehensible aspects of your daily life and bring to those with whom you live and serve and interact the love of God, whom you've met and known in your own moments of prayerful reflection. Karl Rahner, arguably the greatest Catholic theologian of the 20th century, put it this way: there is only one road that leads to God. It is prayer. And if someone tries to show you another, then you are being deceived. The secret of all secrets, then, is that your lives must be rooted in a deep, intimate relationship with God through your personal and communal prayer, especially the Eucharist. And to the extent that your lives are so rooted, to that extent can you as disciples of Jesus be convincing without being arrogant, able to confront without being intolerant, gentle and forgiving without being soft, and authentic role models and witnesses without being manipulative. And so tonight, it is my hope and prayer that in the days ahead, you candidates will seek to be people who trust in God's providence, people who adopt a simple lifestyle, people of joy, people of resiliency, and people of prayer. And if you do this, then you can be sure that your lives and your careers in the days ahead will truly give honor and glory to God and bring hope, peace, and betterment to God's people. So now I would ask you who are to be confirmed, and only the candidates, to please stand for the renewal of your baptismal promises.